Asia is the Dharma. Sanskrit word that means the teaching. So it's about the teaching. These Western isms, they represent more this particular, we are always particularly happy if we can classify something with an ism. And so, Buddhism. Do you know anything about, where did you come? Sorry? Okay. Any other motivation?
I like to be updated in what's going on.
Okay. All right. I have a degree in philosophy and post-graduation also in philosophy. I'm practicing Buddhism for 30 years. A particular kind of Buddhism that is called Zen. I have a double nationality, German and Portuguese. I grew up in Germany, but my parents were Portuguese. So, spent some time in America. And as I told you, I do practice Zen. Zen is the Japanese translation of a word, of a Chinese word that is Chan. So, Buddhists went through China around the turn to the modern, to the common era, and went through the Silk Road and got to Japan. And the guys in Japan, they have their own language, of course. The Chinese, they called it Shan. The Japanese, Zen. Zen and Shan, all the Buddhism in Asia, Central Asia, until Japan, derived from a kind of new version of Buddhism that is called Mahayana Buddhism. All in the north is everything in China, through the Silk Road, Alexander the Great, so a lot of traffic, and where there is commercial traffic, their ideas are also transported, as we know. And so Buddhism got transported through the Silk Road to China. The Chinese first didn't understand very much what this is about, Buddhism, and they had a known worldview that is called Taoism. They had basically two, Confucianism and Taoism. And they misunderstood Buddhism for Taoism. So, Taoism, for that reason, had a strong influence on the Chinese Shan, right? And when it got to Taoism, and we are talking about Taoism, but Taoism is a kind of worldview that is marked by spontaneity. And Buddha did say something similar. we will see what he said about concepts, mental concepts, and the importance of mental concepts for our well-being and for our suffering. Alright, so let's go a little bit forward here. Buddha is an honorific name, was not the name of the guy. Christ was also not the name of Jesus, but was an honorific name. Buddha means is also a Sanskrit word that means the awakened. A person that is awake. And this, resumes very well what Buddha taught. Buddha taught to be awake. Oh, this means we are sleeping somehow. And in the Buddhist perspective, we are. And we will see why. What reasons did they give us to insist that we should awaken? Interesting. And then the guy was called Siddhartha Gautama. We are not sure that he did really live, but there are good reasons to believe this is true. Siddhartha did not write anything, as Jesus Christ did not write anything, as Muhammad did not write anything. So everything we have are who did write? The followers did write. The apostles did write. The followers of Buddha did write stuff down. The Buddhism is 2,500 years old, much older than Christianism, and of course along this, and we have to distinguish. First, we have to understand if Buddhism is a religion. There are some doubts about saying that Buddhism, it's considered a religion, but we should indicate and see, is this really true? Is Buddhism a religion? There is no God in Buddhism. This was one of the breakpoints of Buddha regarding the early Vedanta tradition in India. In that region, there was many people think that in India there are several gods, but no, it's only one. It was a monotheistic and is a monotheistic religion, but God assumes different forms. Jesus, the Holy Ghost, you see, there are different forms. God appears in different forms, and we might then think, oh, they believed in several gods. No, they did not. God has many faces. And Buddha did not write anything. He did teach. He was very ruler, and then he did not want to teach anything, because that's what we can read in the scriptures. He believed that people would not understand what he was saying. Meaningless effort, he thought. But many people asked him to share his views, and at the end he did teach 40 years long in a region that is today Tibet. Okay, it's northeast. It was northeast India at that moment. Nowadays it's Tibet. So apparently he was born there, and quite a state of enlightenment, awakeness under a body tree. And we will see what this is. Abhidharma, or Abhidhamma in Pali, this is a kind of slang of Sanskrit, Pali. The guys that, the first 5 followers of Buddha did write in Pali, not in Sanskrit. You see here, there are slight differences. Abhidharma, Abhidhamma in Pali. Okay? This is Sanskrit. 2,500 years old, and of course, Buddhism is not like Christianity. There is no Bible that everyone is reading. There are different scriptures, because Buddha did not write anything. Many people did write down and interpret differently what Buddha did say. There are things that are common to all. There is another tradition that comes from the beginning of Buddhism, and this is the only one today that goes back to the time of Buddha, and is called Theravada. Theravada Buddhism you will find in Thailand, Burma, so in Southeast Asia. There, the guys, they have a tradition that is called Theravada. Theravada means the way of the elderly. Theravada. Or Buddhism. There are some differences between the different forms of Buddhism, but they have a core in common. Alright? The core in common, before we continue, let's try to understand what is the main message of Buddha. What was the guy talking about?
Mindfulness.
Yeah?
Mindfulness.
Not real. Yeah. Mindfulness is, they didn't use this word. Mindfulness is the concept of mindfulness appears very, very late. And mindfulness is related to meditation. Buddhism is not really about meditation. There is meditation is one of 8 precepts in Buddhism, and we can say that probably Buddha did practice some kind of meditation. But the concept of mindfulness is a concept that was developed somehow in the West, in America. So Buddhism is 2,500 years old. The Americans didn't exist at that time. So it can't be original Buddhist concept. It's a Western concept, mindfulness meditation, that is practiced nowadays all over America and over the world. There are some courses that are called mindfulness-based stress reduction. Did you hear about that? MBSR. But this is a Western invention. MB, mindfulness-based stress reduction. Okay? Was invented by an American, a guy that has a doctor in molecular biology in America, and he wanted to release. It was used first for cancer patients. If you have cancer, as you know, you might have a lot of pain. And these people were normally, injected with morphine, but you know how morphine is. You get addicted, and the body gets habituated to the dosage, and then you have to go higher. Okay? We have a crisis at the moment in America because the guys who were administering the doctors morphine, because people don't want to have pain, and they nowadays even less than earlier. If we have a very small pain, we go and run to the pharmacy and buy painkillers. We don't have pain, but we get something else eventually, because we act like this. So MBSR, mindfulness, that is stress reduction. You see the mindfulness, all right? So, but it's not alien to the Buddhist thought. Meditation. It's one of the 8 precepts of the path. What is the path? The first known talk of Buddha to their followers has the title of the 4 Noble Truths. Noble means, in this case, that they make you a better person. It doesn't mean anything else. There is no nobility in another sense. And what Buddha was mainly concerned about was something that is called, if I go forward here a little bit, it's Mahayana. This is, you see, the spread of Buddhism. Mahayana, he here we have the Theravada, Japan, Chan here, and then Zen in Japan, as I told you. Silk Road, we did already look about this, and these are the Four Noble Truths. The teachings of Buddha are very often compared with a medical procedure. The illness is dukkha. Dukkha can be translated with, it is normally in the West translated with suffering, but the word means much more than this in its original form. Everything that is unpleasant is dukkha. Everything we aim for or crave for is dukkha. And everything we want to keep away is also dukkha. So, these are the two important concepts. The cause is craving or attachment or aversion, because we get also attached to aversion. Remember the case of the pain. If we have a small pain, we have such an aversion to pain that we need to run to the pharmacy to buy a painkiller. We get dependent on painkillers because our aversion is such to pain that we can't stand it. And we have to use immediately chemicals to get it away. And of course, this is the same for pleasant states. If we want to, people tend to prolong pleasure. But as we know from biology, and now we are coming from here to biology, the moment, pleasure is related to some chemicals in our organism. For example, dopamine. And the shots of dopamine we get, they extend for milliseconds, and then they are gone. And why is this? What would happen if we would be constantly pleased? What do you think?
We don't care.
Boring it becomes.
We would probably die, because we would not go for food anymore. We are all pleased in paradise, and we don't move a foot anymore anywhere. Okay? So Buddha couldn't know about this, of course, because at the time he was living, the science was not developed enough to understand these principles. Everything, evolutionary biology tells us that everything, life, from a cell to a compound and complex organism like human beings are, the aim is to survive and propagate itself. That's the aim, right? Not to see reality as it is. This is not the aim. Alright? We are in a special position in the chain of life, because we are self-aware, and Buddha did say something about the self. We will see that is very important. We are self-aware, we are very clever, we can think formally. We develop mathematics, for example. Not everyone can do it, but and these formal capacities, when do they develop? When do we develop mathematical capacities? Anyone knows? This is not developed when we are 6 years old. No. In the 20s, it goes in the 20s. You know, the full Piaget showed us this. This is only full developed when we are in the 20s. It takes a lot of time for us to be able to create a language, understand a language, and use a language that is purely formal, that only describes the change of processes, completely detached from reality, or not. There are different philosophies about mathematics. But, back to Buddha. Life is suffering. It's very unpleasant. The moments of pleasure are very few. It's not a very happy predicament, the human one. Only few. And there are two types of suffering, Buddha tells us. One that we cannot avoid. If I'm walking over the street and a car drives over me, I have pain. Can I do anything? No, I can't. This is not in my power. We don't have a magic wand that makes this pain disappear. But there is another kind of suffering and another kind of pain that is self-inflicted. And this is the pain that Buddha addresses. Not only because we can see, for example, that people that are treated with MBSR and have cancer can withstand the pain much better. Right? Only through a special mental attitude of detachment. Alright? We all make this experience or not. If we have a pain and we begin concentrating in the pain and we begin fantasizing about the pain and I will die tomorrow eventually, then we got much worse and the pain grows. Everyone makes this experience somehow, right? If I let the pain go, it goes on. Right? If I can't relax, and this is what the guys do in America with the MBSR that is applied to cancer patients. And another thing, in the average, cancer patients that are treated with MBSR, in the average, live 6 years longer than other patients that are not treated with MBSR. We all somehow know that our attitude, the way we deal with sickness, has a strong influence on how long we live, if this is a life-threatening situation. And science confirms that this is really the case. Our immune system works very differently and is strongly related to our mind, how we think, what kind of interpretation we have about our own body state, and so forth. Buddha knew this 2,500 years ago. He knew this. And you see, it's structured like a doctor sees a patient. Because Buddha understood his work like the doctor. He did not want to think about metaphysics. Was not his case. When people asked him questions that were in the realm of metaphysics, he would not answer. He wouldn't say anything about it. His main concern was human suffering, the reasons of suffering, and the suffering that we inflict to ourselves. This is the suffering. The other kind of suffering, we can't do anything about it. You might know, for example, the Stoics. Stoic philosophy. We have to distinguish what we can control and what we cannot. And about what we cannot, we shouldn't do anything, right? Because everything we do about something that we cannot control is what? We are losing energy. It's a kind of stupidity, but it's very human. We do this very, very often. And this inflicts us pain. Satisfaction is gone when we are dealing with things that we cannot solve, that we don't have control about. But we try to. We insist. And in this process of insistence, we inflict ourselves pain. Suffering is caused by attachment and aversion. Second noble truth. Second truth. Prognosis. Get rid of Trishna and you get rid of dukkha. Alright? If we change our attitude, did Buddha say, and if the cause of our suffering, self-inflicted, is attachment and aversion, what we can expect is that this suffering should cease. It's very simple, isn't it? And then the eightfold path, right? Begins with one important eightfold path, is normally divided in three sections: wisdom, right view, right intention; action, right speech, right actions; and right livelihood; mental state, right effort. And now you see here, right mindfulness is one of it, and right concentration. We have to live. There are prescriptions. Many people think that in Buddhism there are no life prescriptions. There are. There is no God, but there are prescriptions. Ethics. So we have to live. If we want to get rid of suffering, we have to live in a certain way. And this is the way we should live according to Buddha. Right is a translation of a word that is not really very correct. It means more complete than right. Complete means here, and this is one of the things that is very important in Buddhism, to understand one of the metaphysical concepts of Ayana Buddhism is translated, the concept is known in the West as emptiness. And many people think that emptiness is, that they mean by this something, there is nothing. So this is empty, there is nothing. No. This is completely wrong. Emptiness is not about there being nothing. It's the emptiness of a certain thing. If my glass is empty, it's empty of wine or water. But there is a glass, right? There is no complete emptiness. This was the original meaning, what Buddha wanted to say, at least in the Mahayana version of Buddhism. It's interpreted like that, is that we are empty of a self-defined thing. Saying it in another way that is more clear, everything is interdependent in the universe. I'm only alive because I breathe oxygen that is in the air. I can only speak because my parents did teach me that. A human being that does not grow up in a cultural environment, as we know, is an animal, like any other animal. Alright? And later, we will not be able anymore to learn a language or anything else culturally. Because there are times that are optimal for learning, and if we don't do this in the right time, we will never do it. There are some exceptional cases of human beings that grew up in the wild with the animals. They were animals. Yeah, they couldn't speak, they couldn't, they understood, they could thrive in the wilderness eventually much better than we, because they...
How about Romulus and Remus?
Romulus and Remus are mythical figures, are not.
Okay.
So we depend on everything else to be what we are. This is what Buddha meant by emptiness. Everything is deprived of self-essence. What the German idealism called the Ding an sich, the thing itself. There are no things themselves, said Buddha. We are a part of a whole, and what we are is a specific form of energy that is connected at the end to everything, but manifests itself locally. But imagine the guy was saying this 2,500 years ago. Something that is today largely confirmed by science. Okay? We will go to the notion of self and to the findings of the actual neuroscience and see the strong parallels that exists between what is today, the findings, what are today the findings of neuroscience, and in another way, of course, because at that time there was no neuroscience, Buddha could not know this, but he intuitively understood some things that are perfectly confirmed today by neuroscience. But we will see this when we get to the notion of self. And what are the fundamental problems? Buddha thought about this, and he came to the conclusion that there are two underlying attitudes that are the ground of our suffering. First, we don't understand impermanence. The world is constantly changing, right? Are we today? I'm today 66 years old. Am I the same person that I was when I was 18?
You are not even the same person that you were 2 minutes ago.
Exactly. Exactly. You know this Heraclitus. You know what Heraclitus did say? We cannot pass the same foot in the 2 times in the same river. You see, everything is changing constantly. But we have an attachment to the self. And this brings a problem. Right? We should do this a little bit in dialogue. We don't understand correctly impermanence, and we think that we are selves. What kind of problems brings this to this species, to the human species?
Fear of death?
Yeah, that's the first one. That marks our life completely. We are the only animals, as far as we know that they will die. We know that we will die. No other animal knows this. No other animal knows this. modern neuroscience, for example, maybe you have heard about him, is, I told you I have a double nationality, Portuguese and German, and the guy is a Portuguese, but he is working at the University of California, is a world-renowned neuroscientist, and is called Manuel Damasio. Has many books, published many books about modern neuroscience, and he distinguished between I have a connection to him because we are both Portuguese, and we can understand each other relatively good. He distinguished between a core self, and this is not something he was dreaming of during the night. This is the result of experimental science. A core self that we have in common with any other animal, even bacteria. You know, if we poke a bacteria, the bacteria retracts. We need a core self to coordinate, you know, every complex biological being is composed of millions, billions of cells. Every cell has its own function, and for this to work together to sustain life, there must be some coordination, right? Else we would fall apart in pieces. Alright? So there is something, a notion of a notion that creates a kind of cohesion and coordination that Damasio calls core self. But the only animal on earth that has what Damasio calls the biographical self are human beings. No other animal has a biographical self. And what is a biographical self? Can you imagine what he means by this? What distinguishes us, ourselves, from the selves of any other animal on earth, from the selves of apes, for example?
Time.
Yes.
We know about
The notion of time is one that is very important, right? And is one that sustains the illusion of a self. Because, I can tell you, modern neuroscience doesn't see a self anywhere. The self is a phenomenon that arises from the workings of the whole. It's something that derives from this, but is not a substantiality. And since everything is impermanent, and we ourselves are impermanent, we were seeing we are not the same person as we were when we were, in my case, because I'm old, when I was 18 years old. I have a memory of it. Nothing else. I'm not the same person. That's for sure. I'm considered to be the same person, but this is only an ethical regulation. It's for the law to apply to me. You see? Because for the laws, we have laws. Human beings live in social communities, right? And if you kill someone, you are up to some reaction from the community. Then you could argue, as it was argued in Roman times, the guy did something in his youth and then got to the judge and told him, sorry, but I am not the same person that I was when I committed the crime, so how can you judge me? Yes, please.
What you're saying is that we're not the same person as we were from 20 to 80, a friend and I. But that is that pure Zen Buddhism? Is that what you're saying from that?
This is Buddhism, yes.
Only. Because
not only. There are other people that have the same opinion. Western philosophers that did think the same way.
One more. I still believe I'm the same person when I was 15, 16.
And why do you believe this?
I
Can you tell me
believe
that?
it, yes.
But what is the
My
ground?
ideas change. I learned. I made many mistakes. I still do. But this person doesn't. I believe that.
Yes, but can you tell us where do you get this idea from? What feeling do you have that leads you to tell me that you are the same person? What is it?
Because I recognize those mistakes. I would say, how could I have done them? I was that person.
You have memory of it, right?
Yes.
You can remember.
I can remember. But I can look back and say, I did that. Good or bad, I did that. Me.
Yes.
Now my body is old, but not my mind.
I accept perfectly what you are saying. This is the grounds on which we recognize our identity. The capacity we have to remember and to understand that this was done by me and not by someone else. Right? There are processes, biological processes, that we recognize as being our own and not of someone else. And we remember what happened because we have memory. And we can go back and forth in time. Right?
And that's that we don't understand impermanence.
We don't understand impermanence.
Otherwise we would know better. Know that we were not the same person.
We don't, and why do we don't understand impermanence? One of the first things I told you is that evolution of a life, the main concern, as far as we now understand, is not about seeing reality as it is. It's about propagating our genes. And if there is a necessary illusion for us to propagate our genes, this is much more important in terms of the basic goals of life than seeing reality how it is. I give you an example of this so that we understand this better. We heard in the newspaper that there is a place where some days ago serpents were seen. And now we have to go through this place, right? And we hear some noises in the wind, and a lizard jumps out, and I see a serpent. Why does this? And I'm not telling you stories, this happens. Yeah, why do I have this kind of hallucination? Why is my brain producing this kind of hallucination that does not correspond at all to what is really happening? Why does my brain do this? You know, it's better to run away for you to survive, even if you have to run a lot of times away, than not to run away and one time there is a real serpent there and you are bite and die. This is the logic of life. Reality, what goes on in our brain is only connected to reality through our sense organs. It's in the dark here inside, right? How do we see the world? How we are seeing it. How does this happen? These are signals that I'm getting that are transmitted electrically to the brain, and then I begin seeing images of the world, and I have some kind of interpretation of what is going on in the world. Where is this produced? Can we be sure that the world is like we are seeing it? For sure not. For sure not. Because what we perceive are electric signals. What is constructed on the basis of the electric signals happens in our brain. Does not have anything to do with the reality. It does have everything to do with what we need to do and how we need to react to survive. And this is how life did develop. Not for us to see reality how it is. We couldn't. You see, if we would not filter what we are getting in, we would need 25,000 years to process 1 hour of perception. We would not be here before we would understand how we should act. The brain doesn't work like that. The brain constructs reality. The reality that is fundamental to satisfy our needs, to avoid danger, and propagate our genes. This is how information is processed. What reality is, we don't know. We know only how we should act to be alive tomorrow, as far as possible. So, we don't understand impermanence because permanence, the feeling of permanence and the feeling of a self is fundamental to our survival.
But wasn't this understood by Western philosophy when the nominal word was left aside. I mean, you say this goes back 1,500 years. In the Western world,
There are some
although,
examples.
as you said, we were for a long time by metaphysics, at some time when we developed science, we stood
Yeah.
apart. The luminal world
Yes.
is not part now of our
Yes.
understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. This is David Hume. 18th century, 1739. There are some philosophers who imagine that we are every moment intimately conscious of what we call ourselves, that we feel its existence and its continuance in existence, and are certain beyond the evidence of a demonstration both of its perfect identity and simplicity, the strongest sensation, the most violent passion, say they, instead of distracting us from this view, only fix in the more intensely and make us consider their influence on self, either by their pain or pleasure. We can't read this all, treatise of human nature. What was David Hume saying? David Hume was saying, I cannot discover a self. The only thing I can discover is that I have sensations. When I try to look for a self, I don't find it. Right? So, this is not alien to Western philosophy. Also, we assume David Hume has a philosophy that is very near to Buddhism, and we think that we found out that he had contact with the Buddhist philosophy. We don't know how much he was influenced by it, but nowadays, through research, we know the guy knew something about Buddha. But it is not alien to Western philosophy. Of course it is not. But, you know, the emphasis and science, of course, neuroscience, does not look for itself. Neuroscientists are not looking for a self, because this is not something that can bring much light to science, to this, thinking about selves. This is more for philosophers, and the scientists don't care very much about it. It's not, does not bring any extra functionality. And Buddhism is, in that respect, very near to science, right? Dalai Lama, you know him for sure, said some time ago, I have here, if scientific analysis were conclusively to demonstrate certain claims in Buddhism to be false, then we must accept the findings of science and abandon those claims. This is the attitude of Buddhism. There is no God in Buddhism. There is no revealed truth like in religions that are theistic, and so there is no conflict between Buddhism and science. There is, of course, a long-standing conflict between Catholicism and science. Of course, because Catholicism has a revealed truth, and the scientists, they can't handle this, because science shows that some of these revealed truth are very difficult to understand in terms of science. Buddhism doesn't have this problem because it's a non-theistic religion that is only concerned with causality and natural processes. All right?
Yeah, but for example in Buddhism there is a belief of reincarnation.
Sorry?
In certain stream of Buddhism there is a belief
The reincarnation.
which is a debate from a scientific point of view. This is a problem because there is a question of the soul, and what is the soul, and I think it's a question of consciousness. And
Now, there are aspects of Buddhism, she is talking about reincarnation, that are more like religion, metaphysics, and I thought very much, and with me many others, that Buddha himself did have these kind of concepts. This came after it. We have to understand that Buddhism did grew up in a Hinduistic environment where the guys did believe this kind of things. All right? So when a message becomes an institution, many things change. You see? We cannot, I don't want to create here polemic, but, you know, look at what Jesus Christ did say at the actual church. Right? So Buddha did also say a lot of things after him. He did not write anything. Jesus Christ also not. After him, there grew, institutions grew with priests that have their own interests and want to lead truth in a certain direction and want to mediate between God and humans. Then certain things do happen that might not be in the mind of their original thinkers and creators. This is natural. It's a kind of social process. You see, when things become, when ideas are institutionalized, many things do change. You see? Because of the social structure that supports them and has their own agenda, right? So I doubt very much that Buddha did ever believe in reincarnation, right? Buddhists do, some do, some not. Yes?
About your statement that Buddhism there is no God.
There is no God.
Yeah, okay. According to my understanding, in Buddhism, yeah, there is no affirmation of God, but there is also no affirmation. Because the main item of Buddhism is the liberation of suffering.
Yes.
That's the main item. Not whether God exists or doesn't exist, the main item is liberation of suffering. And no emphasis on whether God exists or no God exists. And the question is of where am I coming from? Where am I going? But it does not exclude God.
No.
Just because it's not mentioned that God is there.
No, there are, you know, you can be Buddhist and Christian. Or you can be Buddhist and Muslim. Or you can, this is not, Buddhism is not, does not, you are right, does not handle the areas that are handled by traditional religions. So,
Yes,
there are,
but God doesn't need to be handled by anyone.
No, it doesn't need, but we do it, as you know.
Well, that's the word is how you charge.
Because,
It's
you know,
wrong.
there is somehow a connection. You see, because religions do offer a kind of relief from, we understood that the problems are impermanence and the notion of self. And what do religions promise? Is that yourself will endure
Hope.
in time.
Hope.
Hope.
Religions
Yes.
offer hope.
Hope. Hope.
But you can say that religion takes you to the now, where there's the no self.
No self.
While the empty self. Take you to the now, where there's the empty self. Take you to the place.
The notion, you talk now about the notion of no self. And what is no self in Buddhism? No self is an important concept in Buddhism. What are they talking about when they talk about no self? What they are saying is that, I give you the example of a car. Buddha gave the example of a chariot because there were no cars at that time. What is a car? If I change the pneumatics of a car, is this still the same car or is it another car? If I change the license plate of a car because I export a car, I take a car from Malta to Italy and then it gets an Italian plate. Is this the same car or is this another car?
Its nature is the same. Its essentiality is the same. Only some aspect of it has changed. The tires, for example, or the registration number, or whatever.
The car is the sum total of everything. All right? It's not, a car is not a pneumatic. It's not the motor of the car. It's not anything considered individually in this car. Buddhism, first we have to understand that the notion of self is very much related to the notion of suffering. Because suffering is only possible to this extent for selves. For selves like we are. Right? With a strong attachment, a vision of the past and the future. So, the non-self is a kind of pedagogy at some extent to teach people that if we attach too much to anything, to an illusion or eventual reality, we might have a problem because the world is made of impermanence and we will suffer if we do this. And what Buddha says is a little bit what David Hume was saying. I don't see the self anywhere. I feel something now, I feel something later, I will, but everything is changing. I don't feel today as I was feeling yesterday. The only thing I don't feel is the self. I feel, I reflect about my perceptions, I reflect about but this changes in time. Where is the self there? This lady here was talking about memory, right? But even the memories change. I don't remember today. A substantial part of my life is gone. Might be somewhere, I'm not aware of it anymore. But sometimes I have a faint idea, something that, but it's not present to me anymore. Okay, through this effort of trying to remember or to understand or having the feeling that there was something, I might gain this illusion of a self. And from an evolutionary point of view, it does make sense, because it creates a focus of action that is absolutely needed to protect ourselves from dangers and to survive. And as modern neuroscience shows, a proto-self is everywhere present in animal life. It's not only we. The dogs, they have also a sense of self. The cats, they do also have a sense of self. The dolphins do have a sense of self. You know, even the bacteria, Manuel Damasio showed, a bacteria is also a very, very complex organism, much less than we are, but nevertheless, very complex. We don't understand it totally, even today, after this boom of science. We cannot even understand completely a bacteria. So, there is a kind of self-preservation in this self, but if we attach too much to it, because at the other hand it's also an illusion, we might get trapped and misunderstand the fundamental impermanence of things, and at the end suffer because of it. I had much more, but let's talk and leave it. These were some of the basic ideas. Of course, we cannot in this short time handle everything about Buddhism, but we have enough stuff to think about, so let's think together.
This is very interesting, the point of reducing suffering, which is the word is very much affected by it. But my point that I raised is that Immanuel Kant, who is the epitome of modern philosophy, said that when he read David Hume, he said he woke up from his dogmatic slumber. So what you are saying is very pertinent as regards dogmatism. But Western philosophy today is not dogmatism.
Yeah, of course. But you know, there is in Buddhism, Buddhism is very pragmatic, like the Stoics were. You see, it's not only thinking about things that helps us, we have to act. And what Buddha said is most of the problems we have because we think too much. It's the contrary, you see. I know Kant did have a different point of view than David Hume, and created this notion of a mention that is everything okay. But Buddha did act more like a doctor, as the Stoics did. You see, we don't care very much nowadays about the Stoic philosophy, but to the time they were living, most of the people, it was very, very, very popular, much more than it is today. The Stoic philosophy, now there is a renaissance, as you know. There are many Stoic communities around the world in modern times, but and I did study philosophy, but my point of view is this: philosophy is only anything worth if it can help us live better. Else, throw it in the trash bin. This is my point of view. And I know that some academics might not like very much this kind of ideas, and I was for some time in the academy, and but you know, dialogue is the most important in my opinion. But what is really important is that we think in a way that makes life easier for us and not more difficult. I understand that there are many intellectuals that have a lot of pleasure thinking, because thinking is very funny, and you know, and I like also to think. I like it also, but I am cautious. That's because if we spend too much time, this is you know, very imprecise what I'm saying, but it's my feeling. It was my feeling when I was studying when I was 20 years old and was studying philosophy. Am I missing something here? Going to a terrain that is at the end not so important for me and for my growth as a human being, with all the pleasure that philosophy brought me and still brings when I think. But Buddha has a warning and told us many of the suffering that we have you know, comes from wrong ideas that we have about ourselves and about the world. And I think we should think a little bit about this, because there is surely some truth in this. We all know this. If we go too far, you know, thinking is very nice, but there is a world, you know, that has their own place, and we have to live in this world, and we have to be careful with the way we think and how far we believe in things that might be true or completely false.
There are some experiments in neuroscience which basically prove that some people say that it proves we have no free will. Basically, they've shown that the decision is made in the brain a few seconds before we're actually aware of that decision. Now, Buddhism requires that we have free will, doesn't it? I mean, otherwise, how can I, you know, follow the Eightfold Noble Path? How can I control my actions? So I'm very interested in the part of neuroscience that says we have no self. That seems to make a lot of sense. What about the problem of free will that neuroscience seems to have?
Yeah, you know, there are some difficult points in Buddhism. We cannot, Buddhism, and we have to understand that what Buddha was, his main aim was to alleviate suffering in the world. You see? This was his main aim. I would answer you like the existentialists did. It doesn't really matter if we have a free will or not. We have to act like we have. Do you understand what I'm saying? It does not change if we think that we have a free will, you see, and act accordingly. It's okay. What does it mean to have a free will? This is the problem, you see. What means free will? Nothing can be completely free because everything is interdependent. We cannot act out of nothing. This does not happen. This is a sickness of thought that we can think, and we get back to the problem of thinking. We can think about a being that acts without any constraints and reasons, but this does not really exist. It exists only symbolically inside a language, but it doesn't exist in the world.
Logically, if there is no self, then there is no free will, because you have to have a self before this self can have a free will. So, since there is no self, there's no free will.
But there
It's
is
all independent.
It's a problem.
It's empty.
Yes, the problem is that Buddha did have two versions of the non-self. Yeah. He did have one version when he was talking about human suffering, and did have another version when he was talking about ethics. You see? Because ethics, without presupposing a free will, ethics are not possible. You see? And the problem that you are is very important what you said. It's there in the teachings of Buddha. Two versions of the same thing. One, if you are judging others, and the other one, if he is dealing with suffering. But you see, this is part of the human drama. We have to live it. We have to understand that in some situations there is a kind of contradiction, eventual contradiction with some mental concepts. But when is the problem? Is the problem in the world or in the mental concepts? Because we have to understand that we speak through languages that have their own rules. Languages are symbols that interact with each other at a different level than physics. Alright? It's not the same. And we have to be careful about this, because there are things that are possible in languages but are not possible in physics, at least at the moment. We can imagine everything. It might not be possible. And this is at the same time the strongness of thinking, of imagination, that we can construct worlds that might not be viable or possible. but nevertheless we can eventually imagine them to some extent, of course. I don't think that we can speak about things we never experienced somehow. Or can we? There are limits, even for symbolic languages. But mathematics is very interesting because, the language of mathematics has their own rules. And some kinds of mathematics were developed before an application for it was found. Nevertheless, later, we found that there are applications, there are areas where we can apply what we were logically deriving without knowing if this is applicable to anything at all. So you see, there is some kind of interaction between symbols and the world. But this is not linear. Languages have their own rules, and we can think. We would not even be able to think if we would not have a language. How could we think without a language? It's impossible. So when we are thinking, and you know that this is very common, there are languages that are natural languages. I mean now, German, for example. German is a very abstract language where you can, like Latin to some extent, where you can construct very complex sentences from elements that get together. This is good for a certain kind of thinking, but not very good for feelings. And if you look at the German culture, and I was living there for a long time, but I have a cross-cultural experience, the way they understand feelings or are able to feel feelings is different from Latin or Roman languages, because they don't have the concepts for it. As Portuguese, for example, I have a double nationality, and Portuguese is a Romance, a derivation from Latin, like French, Spanish. It's a language that is more constructed on the basis of verbs, actions, than substantives in German. The German, they substantivize everything. You get a substantive for everything. You see, Portuguese, no. Portuguese is about life, about action, about doing, about verbs. And these long substantives in German, you have to break them down in a lot of words and to express it in Portuguese. You see, even the language constrains us in the possibility we have to think or feel. It's very complex, but there are nevertheless two realms, I think. It's not the same. Different language. Our body has a different feelings are also a kind of language. It's very important. Damasio did research a lot. Damasio is a breakthrough in neuroscience because of one thing. We were thinking that knowledge is the most important. And Damasio shows us, hey guys, you are not right. Feelings are the fire of thought. We would not move a finger if we would not feel. This is the fool. Feelings are the fool for thinking. And thinking, says Damasio, is subordinated to feelings, not the other way around, as we were thinking in the history of philosophy. It's not like that. The thinking is the servant of feelings. Very important. Damasio is a very important author. And the area of affective neuroscience. We misunderstand our feelings. We want to push them away, but they are fundamental for us to act. Without feelings, nothing would happen. Life would not be possible. We have to feel to move. And then we elaborate incredible stories very often to justify why Freud did teach us this, to justify the desire, the feeling that we had and wanted to satisfy. But we know it's the self in modern neuroscience is, and I will end with this, a kind of marketing instance. We have this self to convince others, because we are social beings, to convince others very often of the purity of our actions. Perfect in lying. So we rationalize because we know that others might censor our real motivations. We develop a self that is a kind of marketing instance to pacify others. I didn't do this because no, it was pure altruism. And we, just tell them a long story about why we are altruists. Probably this is not true. So this is one important function that neuroscientists nowadays are investigating. What is the real function of this thing we call self? And the research tends to see the self as a marketing instance, as a social binding momentum in our lives. It's a kind of narrative about ourselves that we sell others to convince them that we are acting purely in the limits of ethics, because we fear that if we don't do it like that, we might be punished. And what does this have with biological evolution? If we don't have friends, if we can't convince others that we act rightly, we might lose friends and might eventually not be able to mate, so our genes will not reproduce. That's the logic. Yeah. Really? Of course, I want to thank philosophy sharing for making it possible to talk to you, and for your presence, of course. You had surely a hard day, and thank you very much.